Hi, this video is a follow-up video I'm making to my Last of Us video I made a few weeks back, where I talk about the things I wanted to see in the Last of Us TV show. If you haven't seen the video, I highly recommend watching it. You can click the card up here to watch it right now, and then you can come back to this video later on. And before I begin, if you haven't played the Last of Us video games, if you haven't started watching the TV show, this video will spoil the first 3 episodes of that TV show and spoil the games. Well, the first game. Oh yeah, and a quick disclaimer, this video is completely unscripted. So it's just me talking about things from the top of my head. In this video, I won't be doing a full recap of the episodes. I'll just be mentioning little snippets of what I liked about the episode and what I didn't like. A lot of other YouTubers have done like recaps and rundowns of the episodes. I won't be doing that here. So episode 1 starts in 1968. Here they talk about a viral outbreak, how a fungal outbreak is more lethal than a viral outbreak. So I found this conversation interesting because the expert talks about the fungal outbreak, how it's more lethal than a viral outbreak, and how there's no cure, there's no way to stop it, and how we would lose a fight against a fungal outbreak. And it's kind of interesting because the last 2 years, we've been dealing with COVID. And, we were very unprepared for that. Of course, over the last 2 years, I hope that we learn things, we learn lessons from the experience we as a country or us as a world made to try to contain and try to combat this pandemic, this virus. And it kind of makes me wonder if a fungal outbreak were to happen in the real world, would we be ready for it? Would all the lessons we learn from, this current pandemic, would we be prepared? Will we learn anything from this? Will we be able to combat an outbreak like this? So I just found this really interesting for the show to start out like this. And it very much set the tone for the rest of the series. And I could say also for the rest of this episode. And then after that scene, the show jumps to 35 years later in 2003, the morning of Outbreak Day. I know I mentioned in my previous Last of Us video that I wanted the show to start like a couple days, maybe a day or two before Outbreak Day. The reason why I said that is because I was concerned that if you didn't spend more time with Joel and Sarah, that her death wouldn't be as impactful as it was in the game. I was concerned that if they spent like a portion of the first episode, probably 70 to 80% of the episode focused on Outbreak Day, I was scared that when you finally see Sarah die, it wouldn't hit you as emotionally as it did in the game. I was very wrong though. I cried like a baby. I knew what was going to happen. My heart was beating before it happened, but it hit very hard. Even though I've seen that scene in the game 3 or 4 times, seeing the scene again in live action and seeing how well Pedro Pascal performed in that scene was just amazing, heart-wrenching, and it definitely, I'm not afraid to say, I cried like a baby. And one thing I loved about the beginning of this episode is that throughout, tension is being built up. You hear news broadcasts about the infection on the TVs and the radios. You hear the sirens of police cars going by. You see jets flying overhead. In the episode when Sarah goes to buy the watch for Joel, which we never see in the game, by the way, this is why I'm very on board with how they started the episode at the morning of Outbreak Day, because you got to see that, which for me greatly increased the tension you felt in that episode. So when she's at the shop, she immediately gets kicked out as Joel's watch is being repaired. You can see the fear in the store owner's wife's eyes, and I don't know, I just thought that part was so well done. It's a very good thing they included in the episode to further build that tension. And then after Sarah gets home, after getting the watch fixed, she goes to her neighbor's house. And there's a part in that scene where she's looking at a collection of videos on the shelf. And as she's looking at it, you can see the old lady in the background twitching, and you already know something's up. And for those of you who play the game, you already know, oh yeah, she's infected. And on that note about the infected in this did not disappoint. I was very concerned that the infected wouldn't be as scary as they were in the game, and oh my goodness, they are freaky in this episode and all the episodes coming after that. I was kind of weirded out at first though about the tendrils coming out of the mouth, but as I watched the show, the following episode, it kind of makes sense. But I'll talk more about the infected when I talk about episode 2 in this video. And I touched up on Sarah's death earlier, but one thing I like that they changed on that scene was they humanized the soldier who ended up shooting at Joel and Sarah, which inevitably caused Sarah's death. Like, you could hear him questioning the orders. He's like, "Are you sure?" He's questioning over and over again. You could hear it in his voice when he apologizes that he doesn't want to do this, but he's just following orders. And that part actually comes into play later on in this episode, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So now I'm going to talk about things they changed, which I like. One of the things they changed was the reason why Joel was out of the house. In the game, they don't really explain that, but in the TV show, Joel leaves the house, leaves Sarah at home to go pick up Tommy from jail, which I think was great because, it built up tension. Because, for me playing the game, I know what's going to happen. The fact that he's gone, you're like, oh my gosh, he's out of the house. What's going to happen with Sarah? Even though I know what's going to happen, it just made me feel very uneasy that he left his daughter in the house, knowing what was going to happen later on that night. I like how the show showed what Joel and Tess do in the QZ. It also shows how hard it is to live in the QZ. Like, Joel is going around, trying to look for jobs. At the beginning, when they show them working the QZ, they're basically disposing of bodies and burning them. They also show more of Joel and Tess's relationship. I don't know. For me, when I played the game, I didn't know they were together. It wasn't really obvious. Maybe that's just me. But in the show, it made it very obvious that they were in a romantic relationship. Another thing they changed in the show was how Tess and Joel meet Ellie. In the game, you're looking for Robert and you're fighting basically the gang he's associated with. And then you meet up with Marlene and she takes you to Ellie and she's like, "Hey, I have a job for you." Because, she's wounded. And fun fact, the same actress who plays Marlene in the game is playing her in the TV show. When Tess and Joel go to that compound, they see that a bunch of the Fireflies are dead and some of Robert's gang members are dead too. Like, something happened and they basically kill each other. Marlene got wounded. So Marlene, she puts Tess and Joel to the job to bring Ellie to meet up with Fireflies in the city in exchange for our car battery, which leads me to the part where I talk about the things I don't like. Joel mentions in the show where he has to go find Tommy. I'm not sure how I feel about that because, in the game, Tommy's gone. He left and he's living somewhere else. He's married and he's with a different group. In the show, he went out and he goes missing. He has no contact with Tommy. Like, Joel wants to go after him to see if he's okay. That's what motivates him to escort Ellie to the Fireflies in the city so he can get a car battery and go find Tommy. I don't know how I feel about that so far. We have 3 episodes that I have already aired, and I'm still kind of iffy, but I'm trying my best to stay open to that. Not sure how it's going to be executed later on this season, but I'm optimistic and I'm really curious of how that's going to go moving forward. Another thing I didn't like from this episode, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way at the first time I watched the episode, but it kind of made sense after watching the second episode. When Joel and Tess find out that Ellie is immune, they kind of rushed that part. I get it was the end of the episode, but it still kind of bothered me. But other than those 2 things I didn't like about this episode, this was an overall good episode, a great way to set the groundwork for the rest of the 8 episodes that are going to come out for this season. This episode was great and has me hyped for the rest of this season. So for episode 2, they start off with a flashback. In my previous video, I talked about how I would like to see flashbacks in the show, and the way they're doing flashbacks so far is just amazing. It adds more to the story they're showing, and the flashback this episode, which is great, it laid the groundwork and set the tone for the infected and for the infection. I mean, this episode in general just basically was just telling you about the infected, how they work, and they portrayed them very, very well. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But this flashback starts in Indonesia. There is, I believe she's a mycologist, and she is taken to look at samples of the cordyceps fungus from a dead person. I was very shocked seeing this scene when she walks into the facility to take samples from, or to look at the body of the dead infected person. I was not expecting to see a full-on naked body, but I was like, oh, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like, she's dead and they need to examine the body, but still, that it shocked me. Anyway, she's going in, she's examining the body, and it does a great job to, you know, create tension, because the whole time I thought the dead infected person was gonna lunge at her, but luckily it didn't. It was very unsettling to see how scared this mycologist is. She's very knowledgeable with the cordyceps fungus. Since she's very knowledgeable, she knows how it works. And the fact that she sees that it spread to humans, you can see the fear in her eyes and on her face. And, you know, even though I played the game, that filled me with uneasiness. It made me very scared, actually, because, you know, something like this happening is very scientifically plausible. And later on in the episode, like, she's talking about how there's no vaccine, no cure for this fungal outbreak.
Jadi kapan ini terjadinya, Pak?
Kurang lebih 30 jam yang lalu, Bu.
Di mana?
Di pabrik tepung dan gabah di barat kota.
Saya telah menghabiskan waktu hidup saya untuk mempelajari hal ini. Jadi tolong dengarkan saya baik-baik. Tidak ada obat. Dan tidak ada vaksin.
Jadi apa yang harus kami lakukan?
Mulailah pengoboman. Bom seluruh kota. Dan seluruh orang yang ada di dalamnya. Maaf, Pak. Apa ada yang bisa antar saya pulang? Saya hanya ingin bersama dengan keluarga, dengan suami dan anak-anak saya.
So when it jumps back to the current timeline, it starts the morning after Tess and Joel find out Ellie is immune. They had that conversation about how she immune and everything. Rather than having that conversation at the moment they found out she was immune, they decided to move it to the morning after, which makes sense for the rest of the episode because they drop a lot of, I don't want to say exposition, but they give you a lot of information about the infected as they travel through the city. There's a scene in this episode where they go into the hotel, which I thought was interesting because in the game, this scene doesn't come until after Tess's death. It was really cool to see that before, and I liked how it was kind of reminiscent to the game, showing Ellie, you know, fool around at the front desk like she's a guest at the hotel.
Yes, sir, I would like your finest suite, please. Yes, ma'am. Would you like me to check your luggage? Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am.
You're a weird kid.
You're a weird kid. Oh, fuck!
And they go through the hotel, and when they find that the way they usually take is blocked, they decide to go through the museum, the Boston Museum of History. On their way there, they stop at a balcony, and Ellie looks out and sees like a group of infected. And this is where they actually talk about a big change they made to the infected compared to the game, which I'm actually all for, and I actually really like. It makes them more frightening, and I'll talk about more of that later on.
The fungus also grows underground. Long fibers like wires, some of them stretching over a mile. You step on a patch of cordyceps in one place, and you can wake a dozen infected from somewhere else. Now they know where you are, now they come. You're not immune from being ripped apart. You understand? It's important. I'm trying to keep you alive.
Like, spores are great in a video game setting, but this change that they made in the show is so good. It adds so much tension and fear, which I really, really love. And they're doing a great job with Infected so far. Later on, they enter the Boston History Museum. I think it's a history museum. I'm pretty sure it's a history museum. Anyway, they enter the museum, and throughout it builds tension. They walk in, And I didn't realize, actually, before they go in, where they're gearing up to go inside, I didn't realize that Ellie's backpack is the same as it is in the game, which is really cool. I'm glad they added that. Like, you could tell the creators of the show love the game, love the source material, and they're handling the show with so much love. Anyway, they enter the museum and they see a mauled up body. If you play the game, you know what's up, but it still adds a lot of fear and tension to those who haven't watched it. Even for those who play the game, like me, I'm like, oh, I know what that is. And seeing the fear in Joel and Tessa's face, you're like, oh, okay, I know what they're doing here. After that, they go into this room, and it's where you see the clickers for the first time in live action. It's so great how they portray the clickers here. They are scary like they are in the game, and the way they move and the way they sound is very reminiscent to the game. And it's basically a one-to-one, like, what I'm trying to say, one-to-one like adaptation. Or if you were to compare them together, is what I'm trying to say. If you compare them together, there's like no difference. Of course, one's animated and one's live action, but it's very good, very, very well done. If you watch the behind the scenes, they said that they hired actors who were fans of the game and got the movement down for the clickers, and I thought that was just brilliant, because I don't know what else to say. I have no words, but the clickers were very well done, very scary, and I am looking forward to seeing more of them for the rest of the season. And if you play the game, you know this is the part where Tess gets bitten. In the game, you get separated from them. When you meet up with them, you see Tess and Ellie fighting off an infected, and later on you find out that Tess is bitten. Here in the show, though, the same thing happens. After the clickers are dead, Ellie gets bit again, which I think is kind of cool and also kind of funny the way it happened. But it shows that, you know, she's definitely immune. Like, she's not just immune to that one bite. Like, it doesn't matter how many times she gets bitten, she's not going to get infected, which I thought was really cool. And again, it's kind of funny at the same time. So they go up to the rooftop, and Ellie talks about the view. What she says is very, very much like the game. I'll play the scene from the show, and I'll play the scene from the video game, just so you could see how close they are.
Now watch your step as you're going up, because it's going to be a little... So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out. But man, you can't deny that view.
Come on, this way. Hey, let's pick it up. Look, we're almost done. Stay focused.
Yes, ma'am.
And then Tess and Ellie walk off, and then Joel is just sitting there, and he looks at his watch, just like the game. I always like that part in the game, because it shows that, you know, Sarah's been gone for over 20 years, but Ellie is very much reminding him of Sarah, which of course sets up the rest of the story. And I thought it's beautiful how that scene played out in the show. So Tess's death is switched up compared to how it is in the game. When Tess and Joel find out that the Fireflies are all dead in the game, the military arrives, and she reveals her bite.
Now, we tried. Let's just go home.
I'm not going anywhere. This is my last stop.
What?
Our luck had to run out sooner or later.
You going on?
No, don't touch me.
Holy shit. She's infected.
Joel,
Let me see.
I didn't mean for this.
Show it to me. Oh, Christ.
Oops, right? Give me your arm.
This was 3 weeks. I was bitten an hour ago, and it's already worse. This is fucking real, Joel. You've got to get this girl to Tommy's. He used to run with this crew. He'll know where to go.
No. That was your crusade. I am not doing that.
Yes, you are. Look, there's enough here that you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's. They're here.
Damn it.
I can buy you some time, but you have to run.
You want us to just leave you here?
Yes.
There is no way that...
I will not turn into one of those things. Come on. Make this easy for me.
I can find...
No, just go! Just fucking go.
Ellie,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this.
get a move on.
We know you're in there. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands up.
However, in the show, I have a love-hate thing for how it's done in the show. So in the show, the Fireflies are all dead, but it's not from the military. One of them gets infected, and basically the infected Fireflies and the non-infected Fireflies basically wipe each other out. Tess starts freaking out. Ellie's like, oh my gosh, she's bitten. Just like how it plays out in the game. But instead of the military showing up, one of the infected kind of gets up. Joel shoots it, falls to the ground. And just like he mentioned earlier, there's tendrils in the ground. They touch the infected, and then it alerts the group of the infected they saw earlier, and they start making their way over to where they are. And so Tess is like, hey, if your immunity is real, you gotta go. So she lays down a bunch of gasoline, she lays down some grenades, and she's trying to light the match to light the gasoline, basically, you know, blow herself up, including the infected. I like how they showed how terrifying the infection works, or how the cordyceps works in this TV show. But what I don't like was how Tess didn't go out guns a-blazing. She looked more desperate because the lighter wouldn't work. She kept on clicking it, but it wouldn't work. I prefer how she went out in the game because she went out like a hero, like a badass. This one, it looked more desperate. It was really cool to see her death played out in live action, but the infected kiss at the end of that scene still puts a sour taste in my mouth every time I think about that scene. There are things I love and hate about this compared to the original, but I still think how it plays out in the game is a lot better compared to how it's played out in the show. It was still a pretty good episode, but I don't know what they were going for. I talked about this with a friend. I don't know what they were going for when they included that infected kiss. It was really weird. It was cool how they showed the infected already considered her an infected and didn't go for her. I just don't know why they couldn't stop there and made that infected, I think it was a stalker, kiss Tess. That was just strange. It was still a great episode besides that because it showed how scary and how unsettling it is for the infected to be on screen. And I love this episode for that, but I dislike it because of that kiss, man. So weird. And then going on to episode 3, at the time of this recording, this is the most recent episode that aired. This is probably, besides the pilot, this is definitely my favorite episode. I like how the episode starts off, not with a flashback this time, but it starts off with Joel making a memorial out of rocks for Tess. It was really cool to see because in the game, you don't really see Joel, you know, mourning the loss of Tess, because after that, you know, you fight the military, you just, you know, you move on with the rest of the game, with the rest of the story. But it was really cool to see that in the TV show. And then it goes on to Joel looking for his stash before meeting up with Bill and Frank. And then the show goes on to the flashback with Bill and Frank. And this is probably the best change so far they made from the game. Like in the flashback, it starts off a few days after Outbreak Day, showing Bill setting up to survive. And then it jumps to 4 years later, showing how Bill met Frank and how they fell in love. Then 3 years after that, it shows how they meet Joel and Tess. And then 3 years after that, it shows raiders attacking Bill's compound. At this point, it's 10 years after Outbreak Day. And I thought that was really cool to show Bill's traps in action. It shows not only how well the traps can keep away the infected, but also it keeps away people like the raiders. And it's kind of sad. Well, I'm not sure if I want to call it sad or heartbreaking. But Bill mentions before they show the raid, at this point in time, he says he wasn't scared until, you know, he met Frank, which shows that they love each other. And, you know, he's afraid because now he has something to lose, or someone to lose. Then after that scene, it jumps 10 years later. Bill and Frank are very old. They also show how Bill is struggling, Frank is struggling with an illness. It looks like it's Parkinson's. And then later on, Frank asks Bill to basically kill him because he's tired of living like this. And so he asked Bill to give him one last day. He asked him to crunch up sleeping pills to put in his drink. And then Bill's like, well, if you're gonna go out, I'm gonna go out too. So they drink the wine and they go up to the room and they die. And it jumps to when Joel and Ellie arrive. And I mentioned this before, this is probably the best change they made so far. I love how Bill is more likable. And I love how in this flashback, which takes up a majority of the episode, shows how two people met when the world went to hell. And it shows how something beautiful can still bloom in a world so bleak. It was just really cool because it adds this flashback adds so much more weight to this scene in the game.
Bill, somebody had the same idea. They stole my shit.
Well, then what the hell is plan B?
You ought to be thankful you're still drawing breath. That was plan A, B, C, all the way to fucking Z. And furthermore, tell Tess that she could take this job.
Don't you bring Tess
She
into
could
this.
shove it right
It
up
has nothing
her
to do with... Jesus. What, you know this guy or something?
Frank.
Who the hell's Frank?
He was my partner. He's the only idiot that would wear a shirt like that. He's got bites. Here. And
I reckon he didn't want to turn, so he...
yeah, I guess not. Well, fuck him.
And I really like what Neil Druckmann said in the behind the scenes. He said, actually, no, he says it so much better.
My philosophy on this show has always been, when should we deviate and when should we come back? If it's kind of the same or worse, we stay where the game is. If it's better, we deviate.
And I'm really glad they decided to go with that change, because it added more emotional weight to everything, to the story. And I do like how when Joel reads Bill's suicide note, you can tell that he's hurt. You know, of course, he lost his friends, but Bill specifically mentions Tess in the letter, which is a reminder to him of all the people that he failed to protect. He failed to protect Sierra. He failed to protect Tess. And you could just see how in turmoil he is on the inside when he's reading that letter. For me, the whole flashback with Bill and Frank is foreshadowing for Joel and Ellie, because Bill and Frank, they met each other and formed this incredible bond that was so beautiful in a world that went to hell. for those of you who are watching this who have already played the game, that eventually happens with Joel and Ellie. They form this father-daughter bond that's so beautiful, and it's the very heart of this story in the game and in the TV show. And honestly, what they're showing between Joel and Ellie, their relationship, I know I mentioned in my previous video I was concerned that portraying Joel and Ellie's relationship, I was afraid it wasn't going to be done right. But after watching these 3 episodes, I have high hopes that they're going to portray their relationship very well, do it justice, maybe even do it better how they did with Bill and Frank. And after seeing this episode, I'm very, very excited to see what they do next. This coming episode, episode 4, is going to show them running into the Raiders in the city, and I'm very excited for that. I'm not sure if they're going to show Henry and Sam in this episode. They might save that for next episode, or they'll meet them at the end and show what happens to them in the episode after that. Like the title says, this show is great so far. I'm excited to see what happens for the remaining 6 episodes. And I know this video kind of seemed rambly at parts. This is very unscripted compared to my previous video. I just wanted to talk about these things from the top of my head rather than relying on a script. And moving forward, instead of making a video like this for the episodes every week, I'll make them every 3 episodes. So the next video like this will come out after episode 6 airs, and we'll cover episode 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm thinking about covering 7 and 8 in one video, and then I'll cover the finale in its very own video. Because I think that's very important, the finale and the way the game ends. I want to compare those two and see how the TV show holds up compared to the game. Anyway, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If you're new here, you like what you saw, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe and turn on that bell icon. Also, I also make gaming content. You probably saw it on this channel, but I have a gaming channel linked down below. And yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.